Well, this was supposed to be my January wrap-up, but I only read one book in January, so it's kind of going to be more of a dedicated review for the one book that I read. I kicked off the year with a hell of a reading slump, which started because at the very beginning of the year, before all my classes started and everything, I DNF'd two very popular books and just was having trouble getting back into anything after that. I was really disappointed in both of those. Neither of them were things that I hated. They were just books that I ultimately found boring and they just did not grab my attention. I didn't think that the characters were well written. I thought the plots were pretty boring. One of them I found I was reading stuff and it seemed like just a little bit later it just didn't matter, the stuff that I had just read. So I just wasn't having a rough time. And the reason I'm not naming those books is I did read them for a project which we'll be seeing a little bit later in the year. So I am going to leave that for that discussion because I do talk about those fairly in length in that video, which I'm hopeful will come at some point this year. Depends a little bit on when some of the other books I'm reading for it come in from the library because I have some pretty long hold lines that I'm in at the moment. But because of those two DNFs, I was really feeling frustrated and I just didn't pick up very much. I was finding it hard to pick up anything and read. So the only thing I ended up finishing was A History of Fear by Luc Dumas, which I really did enjoy this book and I was really glad. I was excited to be reading something that I was actually enjoying again. But by the time I was reading this, classes had started. And so I was reading this very slowly, just a few pages at a time, finding a few minutes here and there to read a little bit of it. So it took me 2 weeks to read this book, but I did really enjoy this reading experience. I ended up giving this 4 stars. I did have a couple of issues, mostly with the end of the book, but this one is following this guy named Grayson Hale, who is an American graduate student who is living in Scotland working on his master's degree, and he ended up murdering someone, and throughout his whole trial, he kept insisting, "The devil made me do it." And then he died in prison under very mysterious, weird circumstances. And so this book is presented as being a manuscript he wrote in prison about his experiences in Scotland, about the events that led up to the murder of this other student. And it's being presented by a journalist who was the person who originally gave him his kind of media nickname, the Devil's Advocate. And she's gotten a hold of this manuscript and is presenting it alongside interviews with some of the experts that were involved in the original investigation. There's excerpts of text conversations that have happened between him and other people and between some of the other students that he knew. There's new interviews that she's done with people that he knew that kind of give more information about his background and his family history. So it's really interesting. I really enjoyed this mixed media format. I think it made this book extra compelling because you're kind of going through it not sure whether or not you should be trusting Grayson in the version of events he's presenting, because it's not clear throughout the book, is he telling the truth? Is he lying for some purpose? Or is he telling you the truth as he knows it, but as he knows it, it's completely wrong? So you're kind of reading and not sure whether to trust him, and then these different additional media elements really helped to complicate the story and added a lot of intrigue, I thought. So I really enjoyed the format of this, and I thought the writing was fantastic, especially because Grayson has this very strong character voice. He's kind of pretentious, but also kind of self-conscious and shy. So it's this interesting mix of personality traits that I found made him really engaging to follow as a protagonist. And I just thoroughly enjoyed the way that this book unfolded. It was super creepy. It was very atmospheric. I thought the setting was really well rendered, and I also just really enjoyed the directions this plot took because I kept going, oh, I kind of know what's going on, and then it would just go some other direction entirely, and I would be completely taken by surprise. But in a way that I was oh, I see why we're going that way. I see where that's coming from. So again, I just really enjoyed this, and my main problem with it, the only reason I've not given it 5 stars, was that I think the ending was a little bit too neat. We get a little bit of over-explanation at the end, where it goes oh, well, here's X, Y, and Z reason that these things happened, and I really wanted it to be a little more ambiguous. I don't like what I call a coward's ending, which is something that's left ambiguous. At the very last moment, you get to the very last moment and it's oh, but was it this or that? And then it cuts off. The medium, the video game, does that, and it really pisses me off. But this one, I think, it just gave too many clear-cut explanations for the things that had happened. And then it also does this thing at the end where there's a handful of questions that are still kind of unanswered, and it wraps those all up with a bow for you. It's oh, but here's the things that we don't actually have answers for. This, and this, that kind of make it well, this answer that's been over-explained could be the thing, and also I think that answer was treated as a twist, but it really wasn't a twist. It was pretty heavily foreshadowed, and I think pretty not subtly foreshadowed. And like, here's this answer, but also like, here's some other things we're not sure about. Ooh, creepy, spooky. And I felt like it was just like a little too neat at the end. Even with that kind of, the ending goes, well, it could be this or it could be that, and we may never know which one it is. It's too neat and tidy, I think, for the rest of the story and the direction the rest of the story takes. And I think the issue that I came to realize I was having with that is that that works really well for the like format of the story, but not for the story itself. I think the ending needed to have a little bit less explanation. It could have cut off a little bit earlier and it would have been a stronger ending. But like for the format where it's like a journalist pulling all this stuff together and trying to answer a story, as like this is being presented almost as if it's a nonfiction, it makes sense that that's the way it ends. I just think it just, the format and the plot didn't have the right ending for each of those two different elements, didn't quite match up. So I think it was a little bit weak right at the very end, but I still had such a fun time reading this. I thought the characters were great. I really enjoyed following Grayson's progression throughout the story. So like, I had a great time. I highly recommend this book. It's one that I might consider buying myself a copy of, but I am glad I was able to get it from the library. And I got to it, I think, a little bit faster than I might have otherwise because of that, because there was a deadline attached to it. And I'm glad that I finally picked this one up. So had a great time reading it, and I'm glad that I finally read something this year that I was enjoying, because this is the only thing I've read this year that I've been enjoying so far. Well, I take that back. I have started one other book. I haven't finished it yet, but I'm like 35%, 40% into The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, which comes out in a few days on February 6th. I'm hopefully going to have that one done prior to the 6th, but where I'm at right now at the like 35-40% mark, I'm having a great time. It's a really fun fantasy mystery, and I really like the world building in this. There's lots of like plant-based technology, and it's this interesting blend of magic and tech that I think is just really interesting and unlike a lot of other things I've read. So I'm having a great time with that one as well. And it's also got a really, I think, compelling mystery to it. So like having a good time there. I just haven't actually finished it yet, but that is my current read at the moment. So that's pretty much all I've accomplished in January, the one book. But the other thing I've been working on, kind of on and off, is I'm finally working on my second sock. So not reading related, just a thing I've been doing. This is where I'm at. I'm almost done with the instep, and then I'll be doing the like stockinette portion to get to the toes. But I'm very glad that I'm finally doing this. I've been kind of stopped for a while because I had done the ribbing and I had done the heel flap, and I was psyching myself out. Having already done it, I shouldn't have been psyching myself out because this is the second sock in a pair. But this part, and I'll show you on the one that I'm not able to drop stitches on. And this part, like right here, you knit the ribbing and then you knit this section at the back, which is the heel flap. And then you do this like little thing here. And then you get here and you have to connect back this along this edge. You have to like pick up stitches along that edge. And that bit, just from what I understood about socks, was the bit that scared me for a long time. And so I was afraid to do it on my first sock, but I was so excited about doing the first sock that I just did it. And I found some tutorials that made it a lot easier, and I was really pleased with how this one turned out. And then I got to it on the second sock, and I started to psych myself out about it again. I was like, oh no, it's gonna be hard. This is the hard part. It's really not that hard. I was just psyching myself out, and I really shouldn't have been. It was fine. I did that in like maybe 30 minutes. It was really simple, and yeah, highly recommend. If you like knitting but you haven't made socks because you're scared, go for it. I have also been scared of making socks, and I'm finding that they're a lot less intimidating than I thought they would be. And even again, like, this was not nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. The picking up of stitches is pretty simple. If I think about it, I'll try to remember to link the tutorials I used, because I kind of blended two tutorials. One of them is from Roxanne Richardson that adds a it's a slightly different method of picking up your stitches so that you have this kind of like increase row look to it, but it basically keeps you from having any gaps along that line. And then I also used one from another creator whose name I cannot remember, but she had a recommendation for a way to close the gap that happens like right at this like little point here. So yeah, I'm very pleased with how this is turning out. And now I'm at the easy part again, because I just got to finish the instep and then do the stockinette up to the toes. The toes are easy. and I'm thoroughly enjoying my time making this sock, so I will be making more socks in the future. But yeah, so we're supplementing with knitting content now since I didn't have any reading beyond the one book and the partial arc. But yeah, that's pretty much what I've been up to in January. February is looking to be another very busy month, at least through like the first half of it. I do have some plans though to read some things that are going to be a little easier for me to get to, things that are kind of like what I call not thinky brain. I don't have to put a lot of effort into them, so I have some plans to be reading some manga in February, and I'm also going to be reading some other things that are kind of like mixed media, or what I call cursed books, which are usually pretty like fun and silly, and I can kind of like switch my brain off and read them. So that's kind of what I'm going to aim for in February, is reading more of that alongside some of the school stuff I have to read. But here's hoping that February is a better reading month for me, and also hoping I finish my little sock soon. And that is pretty much all I have for you today. So I really hope you've enjoyed this video, and if you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting on Tuesdays and Saturdays, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.